Hello, this is David Trimner, CPA and Managing Partner of TrimnerBeckham. Today, let's discuss how IRS Form 1099 NEC affects nonprofit organizations. Now, NEC stands for non-employee compensation. So what we're talking about is payments to and from outsiders who are not your employees. As a nonprofit organization, you might earn revenue for the services you provide. In most cases, the revenue will be related to your mission, so it won't be taxable. In some instances, the revenue may be unrelated to your mission, in which case it is taxable, but either way, you do not need to receive a 1099. You see, your tax-exempt status means that your customers don't have to file a 1099 for you. However, those buyers are going to want some kind of evidence, some kind of documentation to support that conclusion that they don't need to file a 1099. So the form they're going to ask you for is called a W-9. Now you can go to irs.gov and download a blank form W-9, complete all of the information, and here's the key. On line 4, put exemption code 1. That's how your customers will know that they don't need to send you a 1099, exemption code 1. Now you'll see there's also a place to put an exemption for something called FATCA. Don't worry about that, leave that blank. It's very unlikely that that applies to you. Save the W-9 as a PDF and then send it to anyone who asks for it. Well, anyone who paid you for something and has a right to ask for it anyway. And then if they send you a 1099 anyway, which they really didn't need to, don't worry about it. Just ignore it. Now, in contrast, there'll be times when you purchase services, maybe from an accountant, an attorney, or some other form of outside contractor. Now, a nonprofit organization must file Form 1099 NEC for payments that it makes of $600 or more for services now, not for goods, for services we're talking about, unless the vendor is a corporation, outside of the United States, another nonprofit organization, or the payment was made with a credit card. Those are the 4 major exceptions. Now there are other exceptions, but those are the common ones. Now to file a Form 1099 NEC, you will need the vendor's name, their address, their tax ID number. See, now you probably already know their name and address, but you're going to have to ask for their TIN. Sometimes it's referred to as an EIN. Now, the best way to gather that information is to request that they send you their Form W-9. Here's a trick. Do that before you pay them. That way, you've got a little bit of leverage, right? You say, hey, we're about to send you a check, but before we drop it in the mail, we need a copy of your W-9. Works every time. Now, they may say, you don't need a W-9 from us because we're a corporation, or we're in Toronto, Ontario, we're a nonprofit ourselves, or some other reason. That's fine. Even so, they can still send you a W-9. Why? Well, that W-9 then becomes your documentation, your evidence that they are a corporation or a foreign company or a nonprofit or whatever, and establishes the fact that you don't need to send them a 1099. Now, what if you already paid them, but they don't send you a W-9? Even after multiple requests? Well, that creates a bit of a problem for you. The IRS will penalize you if you don't file a required 1099, but you can't file it unless you know their tax ID number. So, what can you do? Well, not much. You can refuse to do any further business with them until they send you that W-9. In some cases, that may force you to file the 1099 late, but it's better to file it late than not at all. This is why we say, get the W-9 before you send them the payment. Now the deadline for Form 1099 NEC is January 31st. Now the penalty actually applies twice. They're going to penalize you once for failing to file a copy with the IRS. They're going to penalize you a second time for failing to furnish a copy to the payee. So for example, if you file 10 1099s, but you do it a week late, that $60 penalty is actually going to add up to $1,200. And in addition, if you fail to file a required form, the IRS can impose a 24% backup withholding tax on you. look at an example. Let's say you paid a caterer $3,000 to provide food for the company picnic last summer, and you forget to send them a 1099 NEC. Well, the IRS can impose backup withholding tax. 24% would be $720, plus the late penalty we discussed a moment ago. That might be another $660. So simply forgetting to send that caterer a 1099 could cost you as much as $1,380. So our best practices are: obtain a W-9 before paying any service vendor. At the end of the year, carefully go through your general ledger, looking for anyone you paid $600 or more, and file these things before January 31st of the new year. Now, you may be tempted to go to irs.gov and download a copy of the 1099 NEC, fill it out, send it in. That is not going to work. You see, they print that version in red in order to keep you from using it. The IRS will penalize you if you print that red version and file it. So you really only have two options. Your best option is to e-file, electronically file your Forms 1099. If you absolutely don't want to do that, and if you're filing fewer than 10 information returns, and remember, information returns is a lot more than just 1099s, there's other stuff too. But if you've got fewer than 10, you can reach out to the IRS, place an order for a printable version of a 1099. You can fill it out by hand and mail it in. Honestly, that's a lot more difficult than just working with the e-filing system. Now, we at TrimnerBeckham are here to help you. We specialize with helping nonprofit organizations with exactly this kind of thing. We can help you identify who should you be sending a 1099 to. We can help you gather the necessary information, and we can electronically file the forms for you. Now, in our next video, we're going to talk a little bit more about 1099s, but in the context of how do you distinguish between who gets a 1099 and who gets a W-2. In other words, who's an independent contractor and who's an employee. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. Thanks so much for listening.